Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be giving my picks for week 2 of the 2023 season of the Overwatch League. 3 game days this week, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. 2 games a day in APAC, 3 games a day in the Western region, so nice and simple. So let's jump in and let's get started by going over the first game, which is the Hangzhou Spark taking on the Dallas Fuel. Spark coming off a big 3-0 win over the Shanghai Dragons that a lot of people expected to go that way. Dallas Fuel, on the other hand, coming off of a somewhat shocking 3-0 loss to the Guangzhou Charge. So, defending champions, obviously, what are they going to do? And now here we have this team that isn't off to a great start. Winston meta, they don't have a great Winston, all things considered, in the way that Hanbin plays. He's good on the hero, but he's not great. And it's definitely one of those things where now they're going up against the best Winston team in the league. Now, we have seen a bit of a shift in some of the Western region games, especially, towards being able to kind of counter those Winston dives with say, like a Junker Queen comp. Hanbin was one of the best Junker Queens last year, so I'll be interested in seeing if we do see some of that transition by the Dallas Fuel going into this week. But even going into this season, I felt as though the Hangzhou Spark were the best-looking team in the region. They basically affirmed that, though it was against a pretty weak team in the Shanghai Dragons in Week 1. The Fuel fell very flat, so I have a hard time picking the Fuel to win this one, but I don't think it will be an embarrassing series. I don't think it'll be a stomp, so I think it'll be a 3-1 victory for the Hangzhou Spark. I think they should still be favored. I think they should take this one, just how good Winston is right now, how good Goose Winston is. I think they'll take it, but I definitely think there is going to be an improvement from the Dallas Fuel going into this week. Up next, we have the last APAC game for Friday, which is the Shanghai Dragons taking on the Seoul Infernal. Shanghai, most people would agree they look to be the weakest team in the region. Seoul Infernal had a close series against the Seoul Dynasty that arguably could have gone and should have gone the way of the Seoul Infernal, though we saw some kind of heroics from Prophet to kind of win the series against for the Dynasty against the Infernal. This game to me should be way more straightforward than what the Infernal had last time. It's a Winston heavy meta. If you're going to have a Winston, I'd rather have Mag than Fleta. I don't think Fleta looked particularly good. And I think the Dragons in general just don't have a ton going for them right now. So I think that this is pretty one-sided in favor of the Seoul Infernal. I think they'll take this one by a score of 3-0. M3 and Zest are pounding. As good as Hisu and Viper are, the rest of the team just gets completely mismatched in favor of the Infernal. So not really much of a choice there, not really much of a surprise there. I'm taking the Infernal to take that one. Up next is the New York Excelsior taking on the Toronto Defiant. Both of these teams starting the season 0-2. Both of them playing very good teams in the first week. New York, of course, playing Atlanta and Boston. Toronto playing the LA Gladiators and San Francisco Shock. Close series against the Shock for the Defiant. Pretty good series against the Gladiators. New York, despite the fact they looked better than we expected them to, they still got 0-3'd in both of their matches. So I think the clear favorite in this game is the Defiant. They were also in the same group in the Pro-Am, if memory serves me correctly, and the Defiant were able to handle them pretty convincingly then as well. I think New York is in a bit of a better position now. They didn't play things the way I expected them to. You know, Creative didn't play in the Pro-Am. Or that's not true. Yes, he did. But they had players on ping, and not everyone was there yet. So I think New York looks a little bit better than we saw when they played in the Pro-Am, but I also think Toronto in general is a better team. I think they're a much better team. I think they had a very challenging week 1. I think that this will be a big bounce-back game for them. I think they're going to completely and utterly obliterate the New York Excelsior by a score of 3-0. I think they're the better team. If they lose this game, I would start to worry if I were a Defiant fan, but I wouldn't panic right now because I think they should take this one, and it should help stabilize this ship that is seemingly not going the way that they wanted it to start the season. Up next is the LA Valiant taking on the Washington Justice. Rough start for the Valiant as well. Not great looks from them in their games. They did get that back cap. That was pretty fun. But generally speaking, it was not a great weekend from them. Justice, on the other hand, started the... Yeah, I don't know why I got so lost there for a second. The Justice, I thought I was in Game 3. Anyway, Justice started this season 2-0, wins over the London Spitfire and the Vegas Eternal. was not the toughest games for the Justice, but it was a very, very, very good weekend from them. I think they're the better team. I think they should be favored to beat the Valiant. I don't have a ton of faith in the Valiant as a team right now. I think they look kind of bad, and I think they're one of the weaker teams in the group. Justice have gotten lucky so far. They have had a very easy schedule so far. So I honestly think the Justice are an incredible team right now. They haven't really been tested yet this season, but I think they should be favored against the Valiant. I think they're better. They look more clean, and so I'm going to take the Justice, taking this one by a score of 3-0. I don't think it'll be particularly close, and I think we just Alpha Yi and Flora alone might be enough to really diff this matchup. Final match on Friday is the Atlanta Reign taking on the Vancouver Titans. My mind got confused there for a second because I thought this was the game I was on for a second, and I was confused. But this is now the Atlanta Reign versus Vancouver Titans, and this is a game that I think should be pretty one-sided as well. The Atlanta Reign look really, 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 really good. They look like they might be the best team in the Overwatch League. Vancouver Titans, week 1, weren't awful. They did manage to net a victory over the London Spitfire, I believe. No, the LA Valiant, and a loss to the Florida Mayhem. But they looked okay in that game against the Mayhem. They took a map off the Mayhem, which is a pretty big accomplishment when you consider how good the Mayhem were in the Pro-Am. They didn't even drop a map outside of the shock in the finals. And so I think that the Titans are a good team. But I think the Reign are another level of good above the Mayhem. I think the Reign really are just an elite level team. They're so good. This meta is perfect for them. They have arguably the best Tracer Sombra duo in the league. They're really good at punishing supports. I think supports are the weakest part of this Titans roster. And I think that Faith is going to have a very, very rough game here unless they completely game plan around making sure Faith doesn't die, in which case they're playing more defensively, maybe not as kind of active and offensively as you would want to play with players like Aspire and Sugar Free. So I think Atlanta has very clear win conditions. They know what they're doing. I think they take this one. I think it's going to be a stop. I think it's going to be a 3-0. As good as the Titans are and as much as they have impressed me so far, I just don't think they are at the level of the Reign. And so give me the Reign to take this one 3-0. Up next is the Seoul Infernal versus the Dallas Fuel. Second time we're seeing both of these teams already this weekend. I think this one should be pretty close. I think that there is definitely room to look at this game and see kind of a game that could go either way, right? I think Dallas will bounce back this week, like I said earlier. I think the Infernal are in a decent spot meta-wise. If they're going to be good in a meta, it's going to be a meta where Zest can kind of pop off on Tracer, where Mag can do a lot of what he wants to do on the Winston. And as much as I think they would like to have skewed on Brig, he's on the Lucio a lot of the time right now. Though it is very possible you could throw... Or he's not on Luke. He's on the Flex Sport while Fixa's on the Brig. So like there are certainly places where they could maybe want to... Like if it was a Lucio Brig meta, this team would be incredible. But I think that this is just one of the things where the Infernal right now I think are favored. I think they have a bit stronger play out of their damage duo in terms of just their comfort on the heroes that they're playing. I think their support duo has looked better than what we saw out of Bliss and MCD. So I think it'll be close, but I do think that the Fuel have... Hanbin is really, really good. I still believe very much in Sparkle, and I think he's had a pretty good series. So I don't think Dallas will be rolled over in the series like they were. They have had rough first outings in the Overwatch League. I think this week will be a much better look from them. But I don't fully trust them in this meta with the Winston meta. Like I said, I want to see them try to run something different if possible. If they can get away with running something like Zarya or Junker Queen, I think this team could be much better. I think it would fit their playstyle a little bit better. I think trying to play dive with Hanbin on the Winston isn't to their best look. And I think if they can try to find a way to counter the Winston dive that I think you're going to try to run into a lot against Mag, I think they'll look better. So I think it'll be a close game, but I do ultimately think it'll go the way of the Infernal. I'm going to say by a score of 3-2. But I think, like I said, really, really good game. Very, very close. Has the potential to be a banger. But I am going to go in the favor of the Seoul Infernal for right now. Up next is the Guangzhou Charge versus the Seoul Dynasty. Two teams that are 1-0 right now. Seoul Dynasty with a close win over the Seoul Infernal. Guangzhou Charge, obviously, that big win over the Dallas Fuel. I think this game will be another really, really good game. I think you look at what these teams are right now. The Charge, I think, were the big surprise of Week 1 in the APAC region. Even more so than Dallas not looking great, was the Charge looking as good as they did. I believed in this team. I did not believe in this team that much in a Winston meta, but they looked really, really good. And I think when you look at this team and what they were able to do, I think they have a really good support line. They might have the best support line in the region. Jimmy and Choi Zaewon are really, really good. Piggy has elevated his play a lot. This is a dangerous Charge team. And I think one of the things they have over the Dynasty right now is just synergy, right? The Charge have been together for almost a year now. Obviously, they put the roster together late last season, kind of the halfway point in the season. They restructured the roster, so I guess it's about not quite a year yet. But they've had some time together, right? Whereas this Dynasty roster, it's a lot of new pieces that haven't been on the team for very long. And I think that is something that really does help the Charge out. And just with how good they looked, I think that it is going to be another really good match. I think the Dynasty do have some edges in terms of some, like, I think Profit's still better than what you have with the damage duo of the Charge. But I do think that the Dynasty struggle and fall behind a bit in support. And I don't know if I think the tank matchup will be super close, because I don't know what Belisria is going to bring as someone who's kind of recent to this team. He looked good against the Infernal, but I don't think he's going to be the end-all be-all for this series. I think that just right now I have a little bit more faith in Piggy based on what we saw, if that is what we end up getting. But I think it'll be a close one. I don't think you can count the Dynasty out of this game, but I think the Charge ultimately will be the team to walk away with the win by a score of 3-2. Like I said, I think it'll be close. I think it'll be competitive, but I do think that ultimately the Charge will be the team to walk away with the dub. Up next, we have the NYXL going up against the LA Valiant. Very interesting matchup here. Two teams on the bottom right now, both 0 and 2-6. Neither of them have won a map yet this season. Obviously, one of them has to win this game. I think this game will be decently competitive. I think what you're going to get is kind of the just two teams that are basically going to be relying mostly on talent. I think with New York, their biggest problem is a lack of coordination, but I think that the talent across the entire team is higher than the Valiant. I think the Valiant are a little bit better in terms of communication. I think the Valiant play very fast and very loose. I don't really think they go as much for like the big coordinated, huge set plays and big like game plans, stuff like that. I think they just kind of go in and just in the moment, they just kind of assess win conditions. They look at what they have. They kind of view the game in a certain way. New York, I think, wants to do a lot of those big kind of plays and wants to do a lot more stuff. I think they have more communication issues. I think they struggle to kind of have some of those moments where sometimes Kellen's in way too deep. He's not going to get the help of his supports because they can't really help him. I think Creative and Kellen play well together when they can, but then you kind of have a bit of a disconnect where you don't have Halo or you don't have Lep with you, or Psycho's doing something else. So New York, to me, has the higher-end talent. I think their coordination's not quite where the Valiant's is. In a game like this, though, I do think the talent will be the determining factor more so than anything else. But I think it'll be very, very, very close. I don't think Valiant are going to be an easy opponent to go over for New York. I just think New York's not at that point yet where I feel like they can confidently or comfortably beat anybody in the league. But I do think they will get the win by a score of 3-2. Might be like a silent banger. Also could be a toilet bowl. Who knows? But I do think New York ultimately walks away from this one with the win. Up next, we have the Boston Uprising taking on the Washington Justice. This is a game that's very interesting. Obviously, there was the news during the week that Izayaki has suffered a collapsed lung, so he is currently kind of away from the team. He's not going to be playing right now. I do think that hurts his team to a degree. Luckily, they have Twilight. They have another flex support player, so I don't think that that's necessarily like the end of the world for this team, but I do think that Izayaki is a big part of this team. They like to play a lot of double flex support. Izayaki's kind of their guy who they have had in for the entirety of the season so far. Obviously, in the pro, they played a lot more Twilight and playing more Izayaki recently. So this will be big for for Twilight and Lee Jae-gon to show that they as a duo can kind of play what you need to. Boston might be adapting some of their play style a bit to kind of fit around those two. It might be a little bit less than what you would kind of want. I think in a case where Izayaki was playing, I think this game would probably be a bit closer, or would not be as close as it will be. I think when you have to make a bit of an adjustment, I think it will be a little bit more kind of disjointed for Boston. I don't think they looked particularly great in some of their looks in week one. Their Somber comps did not inspire the most confidence in me thought there was a little bit of disconnect, but I think you kind of have to realize what you have right now. You kind of have to game plan around that. I think this team is just probably going to play to their strengths with who they have in, so that's what I'm kind of expecting. Justice are a good team. They haven't really been tested yet, so once again, they're a tough team to read. This one I think should be close, though, right? Two teams that are 2-0. They're both coming off of good first weeks against not great opponents. We don't really know what to expect. I think we all agree that Boston looks to have the better talent, but without Izayaki, how will it be? It's tough to really predict. But I do think Boston should still be able to get the win. I think they just look better. I have more faith in them. They played in the Pro-Am. It went the way of the Uprising. So I'm going to go with the Uprising, but I'm going to say a score of 3-2. I think it should be good. This is a good team in Washington. They're not really like an easy pushover team. But Boston, I think, should be able to get this one, even with the lack of Izayaki for this game. Up next is my first big pick game of the week, and it is the Florida Mayhem taking on the LA Gladiators, a rematch of the Pro-Am Finals, which was a banger that went to 6 maps and went the way of the Mayhem. Now, Gladiators had a tough first week in terms of who they played. They opened up against Houston Outlaws and then closed the week against the Toronto Defiant, losing to the Outlaws, beating the Defiant. So the Gladiators have shown that they can hang with and contest with some very, very good teams, including a win over a Defiant roster that, despite their kind of rough start, the Gladiators looked better against the Defiant than, say, the Shock did, right? So the Gladiators look to be, right now, top 4, top 5 team, along with the Mayhem, who also look very good. Mayhem in week 1 really were not challenged very much. They played the Titans. Titans took a map off them. They also played the Vegas Eternal, and that game was not close. So I think it's a really good game. I think it's a good matchup. It's tough to predict because I think when you look at this matchup, you look at these two teams, I think the Mayhem are the better team right now. But in this meta where there's started to be some changes in what you can run, you can kind of get away running things other than Winston. Maybe not as much as you could in the Pro-Am. The Gladiators could take it. But Winston is so strong. Someone's Winston is so good. We've seen a lot of really great play out of Checkmate, out of Sauna, and of course out of Merit. The support line's really, really firing on all cylinders for the Mayhem. I think it's a very, very good matchup. It's a very good team. And I think that the big determining factor is just someone is so good on that Winston. I think he might be the thing that is just a little too hard for the Gladiators to overcome. So I am going to take the Mayhem in this one by a score of 3-1. I hope it's close. I really, really do, because I do think this is a really great matchup. But right now, I just have faith in the Mayhem because they've looked really, really, really good. Even if they haven't played the toughest competition, I still think they should be the favorite in this particular meta. Up next, we move on to the final day, and we start in the APAC region with the Shanghai Dragons taking on the Seoul Dynasty. I don't think it's going to be particularly close. Dynasty look way better. Dragons look very bad. Dynasty should be one of the favorites in this region. Even if they're not the best team in the region, they should still be better than a Dragons team that I just think has pretty much no chance of really doing anything this season if they don't make any additions to their roster as it is now. I just don't believe in it. I don't buy it. And I think right now the Dynasty look to be the better team, so I'm taking the Dynasty to win this one 3-0. I don't think it's really a surprise. Sorry for that. I don't think it's really a surprise. I think the Dynasty should be the better team, and they should take this one. And, yeah. The final big pick of the week is the Zhoudown. Hangzhou Spark, Guangzhou Charge. After last week, this game has me super, super excited because they were the best two looking teams in the APAC region. I think these teams are going to play a banger of a match where I think the interesting thing is really kind of where is the edge in this game. I think this is this type of game where I think the Charge win out in the support line by a little bit. I rate Monk a little bit higher than Faraway. I think they're close, but I do rate Monk a bit higher. I think Xerneas is the better main support over Lengsa. Xerneas is more of a playmaker. He makes kind of a lot more of those big plays, those big moments. Lynx is a solid player. I don't think he's going to lose you games, obviously. But to me, Xerneas can win you games. He has had that kind of impact. Tank-wise, I'd take Piggy over 20 if we're in an off-tank map. But on main tank, on Winston, of course, we're going to take Gushue. So it really does kind of matter big in this kind of damage matchup, which obviously Leave and Shy really, really good at the game. Choi Se-won and Jimmy also good at the game, but they're not Leave and Shy level. So I think this game will be really, really good. I think it'll be really close, really interesting. I think maps will really kind of factor into what we get. Obviously, it's not pick a map, So it could be, whatever. I don't know what the map pool is exactly, but it's really, really interesting. It's really, really close. Fan prediction, just to show it to you, is actually 81.4% in favor of the Spark. People, stop doubting the Guangzhou Charge as a team. It should not be this one-sided, in my opinion. I do think the Spark will win. I think they're the better-looking team. I think it's going to be a banger of a series, though. I think it's going to go the distance. I think it's going to be a 5-mapper, 3-2 victory for the Hangzhou Spark. I don't see this game being bad. Even if it's 3-0 or 3-1, I think these two teams have shown what they can do. I think with someone like Xerneas, and there is a bit of a chip on the shoulder. This is the team that he kind of would have been on. He was with a lot of these guys. He was with Leave. He was with Monk. He was with 20, and now he's not. And now he's on this Charge team. And I think there's a bit of a chip on the shoulder there. And I think it's going to be a really, really good match. But like I said, I do think the Spark will take it by a score of 3-2 in what I hope is the biggest banger of the weekend. Moving on to the final day of Western region competition, we have the Florida Mayhem against the Toronto Defiant. So another pretty tough matchup for the Defiant, who could be starting this season with a not very good record of 1-3 if they cannot get the victory over the Mayhem. So this is a huge game for them. Obviously, Hydron was on the Mayhem, and Sir Majed was on the Mayhem last year, so there is some kind of blood there. They did play in the Pro-Am, and it was a roll by the Mayhem, 3-0. The Defiant talked about the fact that they really weren't even expecting to win against Boston, so when they matched up against Mayhem, they weren't really prepared. So I expect this game to be closer than what they had in the Pro-Am. I think that this game should be better than that one, but I do think the Mayhem are the better team. I think they look more comfortable in this meta. As good as Kaluj is, I don't think he's going to be able to meet and match someone on tank. Merit and Hydron are both really, really good. I think Checkmate is better than what we've seen out of Speedily and Sam. And then support line, I think you have to give the edge to the Mayhem, even though I think the Defiant support line is good. So I'm going to say that the Mayhem take this one by a score of 3-1. Hopefully a good game. Hopefully better than the last one we got between these two teams. But I do think that the Mayhem should take this one. Up next is the Boston Uprising versus the Vancouver Titans. Another one that I think should be pretty decent. Kind of similar situation with the Boston and Washington game. I think Washington looks right now to be a little bit better than Vancouver, though Vancouver does have two very good players in that damage duo. Boston, how are they going to fare once again without Izayaki? We don't know when Izayaki will be able to return to this team. Twilight and Lee Jae-gon are to kind of change their playstyle a bit. Same kind of spiel as with the Justice, though I don't think the Titans are as strong right now as the Justice. That's a matchup I'd love to see, actually. Titans Justice. I don't know when we're going to see them play. I don't know if we see them the first half of the season, second half of the season, whatever it is. But I do think this is a really interesting matchup that I think Boston should have the edge in, because then they're better right now. Obviously, a lot of the guys on Vancouver were on Boston last year, so there is that kind of chippiness there once again with Punk, with Faith, with Crimzo, with Askoff trying to one-up this Uprising team. So I think it'll be close. I think it'll be a good match, but I do think ultimately it will go in favor of the Boston Uprising. But once again, I'm going to say a score of 3-2. I think Vancouver's going to push them. I think Vancouver's a good enough roster. They're not going to be rolled over, but I think it will go the way of Boston when all is said and done. Final match of the weekend is another banger, Atlanta Reign versus LA Gladiators. Gladiators really needed that win over the Toronto Defiant last week because there was a very real chance if they didn't get that, they could start the season 0-4, and that would be really bad. 1-3 is much better than 0-4, even if you may not realize it. Now, last time these two teams played in the Pro-Am, it did go the way of the LA Gladiators. Really, really good match in the Pro-Am, one of the best games of the entire tournament. Fan vote, pretty one-sided in favor of the Atlanta Reign, which doesn't really surprise me. You kind of expect that. Reign looked very, very good, and I think the thing that the Gladiators are going to have to figure out how to win this game is how to just neutralize how to neutralize the damage duo of Stalker and Lip. That's what I meant to say. And so that to me is kind of the key to the Gladiators' victory. Problem is that's really, really hard, and it's much easier said than done. I think what we've seen from the Gladiators, you kind of look at that series against the Outlaws. They struggled to deal with Shu a lot in that series. I think Chu and Fielder as a duo are even better than what you have with the Outlaws, which is saying quite a bit. So I think the Gladiators can take a map off the Reign. I think it's really tough to expect them to win right now, especially after the Reign lost to the Gladiators, much like the Outlaws did in the Pro-Am. I think there's a chip on the shoulder of the Reign. They want to get the win over the Gladiators. They want to beat them. They want to get their revenge for losing in the Pro-Am, and I think that they will do so this week. But I will give the Gladiators a map because I think that the Gladiators are still a very good team. I don't think they're going to be rolled over. Even though Houston looked very, very good, I think the Gladiators will kind of fix some other things from that game and will look better. But I do think it will be a 3-1 victory for the Reign, and they will solidify themselves even further as the best team in the Western region. So that is it for my picks this week. I'll throw all of them up here on the screens. You can look at them now. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, where you agree with me, where you disagree with me, whatever it may be. But that is it for today's video. If you enjoyed and want more like it in the future, consider liking and subscribing. I hope you're all staying safe and staying healthy. And until next time, bye-bye.